Hello and welcome to another ArtistWorks Instructor Spotlight live stream. My name is Marcus, and today we're going to feature our newest ArtistWorks instructor, Matt Rawlings, who just launched the Soul of Country Piano School at ArtistWorks Online. Now, Matt's topic for the week is time, feel, and function, which he's going to expand on a lot more today. Really awesome teaching approach. Check out all the mini lessons that we posted this week on the channel here too, if you haven't already. And as always, we're going to be taking your questions in the second half of the show. So if you have any questions for Matt, just go ahead and post them right into the comments. And to kick it off, we always love to hear where you're joining us from today. So please let us know where you're tuning in from. And again, any questions, just drop them right there and we'll get to you in just a short time here. We've been doing these Spotlight live streams all year. And so if you like these kind of shows, please tune into the ArtistWorks channel here. Like and subscribe. We do these every other week. So we'd love it if you would join us again. So without further ado, let me bring on Matt. Hello. Hey, Matt. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Right on. So where are you joining us from?
I was gonna say I like your fancy background. It's very like modern artish. I am joining from my studio in far northern California on the coast. We have a beautiful little spot up here in the redwoods, and this is my musical home.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And I see a beautiful piano in front of you. What are you playing on there?
Yeah, this is I bought this in 2019, but if I check the serial number, I think it was made in 2016, but I bought it new. It's a Steinway. I'm a Steinway artist, so this is a Steinway Model B. So this is basically their 7-foot. You know, Steinway makes 7 foots and 9 foots. Yamaha, the Japanese companies, Yamaha Kawai, their 7-foot pianos are actually like 7'6", and their 6-foot pianos are this size, which is like 6'11". But this is essentially 6'11", 7-foot. Steinway B, beautiful, my favorite instrument.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on launching a new school. There was so much work that went into it, and it's just a masterpiece.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was a blast doing it. It was a lot of work, just writing the curriculum, trying to be as complete as I could be, and just when I thought I had sort of gotten there, something else would occur to me that I missed, and I would have to find a way to insert it. And then also when we filmed the curriculum with you, you had so many amazing sort of missing pieces that you helped me to insert into the curriculum. So hopefully it's as complete as we can make it. No doubt there are things that I missed, that we missed, but that's what video exchange is for. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's sort of just the starting point, and it grows from here.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And yeah, I was really excited to meet up with you in Nashville, where you were cutting backing tracks for the session too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, one of the coolest things, which was from the very beginning, I knew that we had to do this because this is a course that really I'm trying to teach. I've played on records for 40 plus years, and a lot of them in Nashville, and so much of the experience of the kind of records that I've played on, of making those records, is playing live in a room with other musicians. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to gather a group of top-notch Nashville session guys in a studio and cut backing tracks like that? So that's what we did. So, and Marcus came and supported and filmed, and we did a bunch of cool stuff there. But Jordan Perlson played drums, Steve Mackey played bass, and the great Guthrie Trapp played guitar, as well as Chris Donegan, 2 guitarists. And Guthrie is an amazing ArtistWorks artist as well. But we spent a couple of days and recorded a lot of music.
Yeah.
That was one of the most time-consuming things, was writing all of the music. And then we also had my friend Talbot Mayo, great country singer and writer from Maryland. She and I co-wrote a couple of songs, and she came, and so we have songs with vocals too, for students to, because that's so much of, it's rare that you're going to play country piano and not have a vocalist. So we wanted to include that as part of the experience.
Yeah, it's very special. And even Alison Brown, the amazing Alison Brown.
That's right. Alison Brown came and played banjo. Right. God, thank you. See, that's why I need you. And we actually recorded. So Alison Brown and her husband Gary West, they founded and run Compass Records in Nashville, and they have Compass Studios in the legendary Glazer Studios building. And so we recorded all the tracks at their studio, and then Allison, who's also an ArtistWorks artist, obviously amazing, legendary banjo player. So she played on some of my tracks, and dear friend and incredible musician.
Yeah, what a treat. So anyone learning with you
Mm.
gets access to all of these great tracks minus piano, so you can sit in with the band just like you're doing the session. So really
Exactly, and
cool.
it's such a different experience to play with live musicians, even if they're recorded musicians, than it is to play with MIDI tracks or something that's programmed. It's a really even if we're playing to a click track, there's a width and a depth to it that really changes the experience. So I feel like it's a great feature of the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, one of the things it really struck me when you first even mentioned it, but your teaching philosophy of this time, feel, and function. I just love this. And
yeah,
it was sort of like an anchor point for your curriculum.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's a little bit more of what you'll be going into today. But
yeah.
it seems like a good opportunity to just pass the mic to you if you want to go into that. But how about starting us off with a little playing?
Great. Do a little playing. I just got to pick a key because I don't know what I'm going to play. So I'm going to pick the key of F. Blues and F, one of my favorite things to play. So time, feel, and function. Marcus just sort of introduced this concept and I've been working on this concept for a couple of years. Um, I figured out, it relates directly to why I have a career, and and if I could sum my career up in one word, it's rhythm. I learned early on as a teenager. I got lucky enough to join a band in Phoenix of older guys that were playing country music, that were playing. This was in the late '80s, mid '80s. That were playing sort of the top 40 hits of the day, and also like the previous 40 years of country music. So, and they were fantastic, and the rhythm section was amazing, and uh, and I learned very quickly in that band that my job as a pianist in country music primarily was to play rhythm. And that could mean a lot of different things. It could mean, playing rhythm in a ballad, right? Country ballad. It could mean playing Western swing. It could be boogie. Or it could be rock. It could be ballad. All of those things fall under the umbrella of rhythm. And so I learned early on how to thrive in a rhythm section, and by thriving I mean how to help. My opinion is that in any musical situation, but in a rhythm section, joining a rhythm section, you're either helping or you're hurting. That there's really no middle ground to that. So if you're helping, for me, that means when I sit down and play and I'm with a rhythm section, I'm trying to help the drummer primarily, but I'm trying to help the feeling of the music supporting the tempo, the feel, the intensity, the dynamics, and I'm trying to not get in the way. I'm trying to join, right? I'm trying to join. This is not about me. So I started thinking about like what are the things that make me, in addition to this, playing rhythm, like what are the things that I employ every time I sit down and play? And I came up with three things: time, feel, and function. And these are they all work together, particularly time and feel, but they're also sort of separate concepts, and I can break it down into three separate concepts. So if we start with time, time relates to tempo. So we have a tempo, 80 beats per minute, whatever that is. So that tempo, so we could even start, here's 84. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a quarter note. And then within that pulse of quarter notes, there are all these subdivisions, right? Those are quarter notes, right? Eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes, and all kinds of variations on them. So for me, what having good time means is that I'm able to, number one, connect with a tempo, whatever the tempo is. And it really means whether I create the tempo, if I'm playing solo or accompanying a singer, or I'm connecting with the tempo that's being stated by the other members of the rhythm section, specifically the drummer. So connecting with that tempo, and then employing what I call my inner metronome. So, this outer metronome is great. It's a perfect timekeeper. I practice to it. But when I'm out in the world, out in the wild, playing music, I have to bring this metronome, to bring this awareness of time and subdivision as it relates to a tempo. I have to bring that with me. So that's my inner metronome. So the goal with this notion of subdivision is that any subdivision, so there's my tempo, right? Eighth notes, triplets, what my goal is that every subdivision, so number one, the tempo is inside me, what the pulse is. So I start with that. And generally when I play, and I've talked about this in my little videos this week, but when I play, that is always going. So I'm always representing the tempo, the pulse of the tempo somewhere in my body, and it usually is my leg, because I'm sitting, I'm anchored here. I have to have all this stuff available. I need this leg for the pedal if I use it. So that leaves my left leg, right? 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 And then going on inside me, this inner metronome is churning. So I start with this, and this is the law. It's like I've got a little drummer inside me. And I start that sucker up, and here he goes. There's my little drummer. We'll call him Ralph. I get Ralph started. So the concept for me is that all these subdivisions, it's not like I'm stopping something and starting something else. It's all this pulse. Everything. It's like my inner metronome is like a scaffold, I guess. I call it a scaffold of subdivision. So all these subdivisions are living at the same time. Bop, 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 da da dum, ba da 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 dum, da 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 dum, bum. All that stuff should feel natural, relaxed. It should all feel, that should be, it's inherent. This should be living in every one of those subdivisions. So the inner, time and time, feel, and function. Time is the inner metronome, basically. It's the development and then the deployment of your inner metronome. So how do I build an inner metronome? And one of the best ways to do it is to use this sucker. the outer metronome. And, this is an old school. I've just always liked these. I went to college and pre-college, and all my practicing I did with one of these, probably the same brand, this Whitner German metronome. And I just like them. I like the aesthetic of them. But everybody probably has a metronome on their iPhone. You can get digital metronomes. They're ubiquitous. You can find all kinds of different versions of them. But practicing subdivision to a metronome, and specifically practicing slow. So I hate to say it, but scales. And I demonstrated this on my first video this week about time. But the way I learned in college was to practice your scales: 1 octave of quarter notes, 2 octaves of eighth notes, 3 octaves of eighth note triplets, 4 octaves of 16th notes. So I don't need to do the whole thing, but basically, right? Those are the quarters, eighth. Without stopping, up and down, back to back, 1 octave, 2 octaves, 3 octaves, 4 octaves. And if you do them slow enough, even slower than this, you really start to notice. Weaknesses. You also start to notice when you go under with your thumb. You don't want those notes to pop out. So you can work on smoothing that stuff out. But mostly what it starts to do is it starts to relate all these subdivisions to a pulse, so that it's not, oh, now I'm playing sixteenths, now I'm playing triplets, now I'm playing eighths, as if they're separate. I liken it, I've had an experience, sometimes inexperienced drummers will be playing a groove, and then they go to play a fill, and it's like the groove stopped, and the fill starts, and then the fill stops, and the groove starts again. And it's almost, sometimes it's even a different tempo. And to me, that's just it's a sign of inexperience. And I was told something great in college by an instructor, which and this directly relates to soloing. And the advice was, don't ever play a solo. Play the feel or play the time, but play the feel and let the solo happen. So always, just like a drummer's fill, it should all be contained within this bowl of this time. And then that leads me to feel. So we got time, we're going to feel. So feel, to me, the way I think about it, is that feel is connecting my body to the music, as opposed to my brain. A lot of young musicians, I teach at Berkeley in Boston. I go there a handful of times a year. Oh, that was a big loud ding. That means turn on my do not disturb. So I get to interface with a lot of young musicians, super enthusiastic young pianists, and many of them are fantastic. But a common thing is that they spend a lot of time practicing vocabulary, technique, extended harmony, all this, because Berkeley is very much a jazz-centric, particularly the piano department, jazz-centric school. And all that stuff is great, but it tends to be very cerebral, brain sort of activity. And the missing piece for a lot of these players is their body. And you can be a great, technically proficient with all the vocabulary, all the licks, everything together. And if I listen to you and I don't feel anything in my body, you're going to lose me. I kind of don't care. So the goal with teaching feel is how do I get in my body? Now, I've showed you already the way that I do it, the way that I've developed, which is that I do this, all right? So just to clarify, I'm not pounding my foot as a response to the music I'm playing. It's the opposite. This is the beginning, and then I'm playing to that as if, what did we call him, Ralph? As if Ralph, the drummer, was the drummer in my little inside fantasy rhythm section, and I'm playing to Ralph. Ralph is the boss. So for me, that's a way to immediately get in my body. This is my body, right? This is not my brain. So the brain is great for building your toolkit. So it's great for figuring out what to practice, reading the music, practicing, all that stuff. They can be very brain focused activities, and you want to build your toolbox. The more tools you can have in your toolbox, the better you are. But if you got a toolbox and you get in your pickup truck, where does the toolbox go? Behind you, right? Like behind the seat. So to me, that's a great visual of where my musical toolbox should go. I spend a bunch of time practicing, learning, and toolbox could also be likened to craft, right? We're building our craft. And I really like the concept of letting my craft work for me. I work really hard for my craft. So when it comes to playing, stepping on stage, in the studio, interacting with other musicians, I can put the toolbox behind the driver's seat and it will work for me. And then that allows me to connect with my body, right? People throw around the term getting out of your own way. This is what we're talking about. I like to try to drill down into that concept. It's easy to say, I'm going to get out of my own way, but what does that actually mean and how do I actually do it? So one way is engage your body in some way. Your leg is a great way to start. Something I teach students, and it's in my course, is if you can, if you're willing to do this, find a space that's private, that you can lock the door, that nobody's going to barge in on you, and bring a music source if there's not one already, and pick a piece of music that makes you want to move, and give yourself at least a half hour, put the music on and dance. And this will be really hard for some people, not as hard for some other people. But dancing is the most direct connection we can make between our bodies and a piece of music. And so the idea is, number one, just to start feeling what that feels like, to connect my body to music. And then number two, pay attention to what the sensation is. What does this feel like? Where do I feel it in my body? Like, pay attention to that, and then the next time you sit at the piano, see if you can invoke it, see if you can bring it back up. So another thing, which is can be a scary concept, but if we talk about feel is short for feelings and feeling. And by feelings, I mean like emotional experiences, feelings, grief, sadness, joy, nervousness, anxiety, all these things, all these feelings that we have. This is the source of feel to me, of musical feel, is the ability to access my emotional body. And my emotional body is in my physical body. I talk about this more in the school, but that's the concept of feel to me, is how can I get out of my brain and get into my body? And then I connect that with my inner metronome. Those two work together. So the inner metronome, my concept is that it lives in here, and then I get my body going, and then I've got this trustworthy inner metronome, and the two of them together are like a ninja force. It's like you get your body and your feelings involved, and then you have this inner metronome that's born of the practice that you've done and the craft that you've developed. And it's a really powerful thing. So that's kind of a synopsis of feel. So function is the third one: time, feel, function, TFF. So function in a nutshell is, what's my job in any given situation, whether I'm at a rehearsal, a jam session, I'm on a recording session, I'm on stage live with a band, I'm playing solo. There's always for me, there's always an awareness of, okay, like, what am I here to do in this moment? What is my job? So as I've talked about, for the most part, if I'm playing country music, if I'm on a country music session, playing on a record, or I'm playing with an artist, my job is to some degree going to be to play rhythm. So there's the overview, and if I drill down into that, well, what style is this song? Is this a Western swing song? Is this a ballad? Is this a rock song, a boogie song? Is it sort of have a New Orleans feel? Is it like a second line? Is it Jerry Lee Lewis? Is it, there are all these different sort of sub-variant sub-jobs within the job of rhythm. So step two, figure out that piece. Like, what is this song call for? What kind of rhythm? Part of the job is, do I take a solo? Do I play fills on the second verse? So then part of that is, what's the vocabulary for the solo? What's the intensity? What's the energy level? What kind of fills am I going to play? And then, part of what's my job is also, in any given situation, who do I need to be? And I'm not talking about like code switching for every situation, but more about what level of support do I need to give to my fellow musicians, to the producer, to the artist? Other than my musical contribution, what is not only required, necessary, needed, but also appropriate for me as a human to bring to this situation? One of the things that happens on recording sessions a lot is humor. Humor is one of the great fuels for recording sessions. And if you ask any session musician, they'll tell you the same thing. But it's not always the same humor. Some sessions can be very loose and very open, and I know that I can bring my goofiest self. Some sessions aren't. Some sessions have a more buttoned up feeling to them, and I need to kind of do my job, and there might be a moment where I can latch onto a little humor, but I'm not necessarily the instigator of the humor. So this kind of stuff, this piece of what's my job, involves sort of the psychologist part of you, and it's really about honing our instincts and learning about people, about relationship. And there's a piece of this that is really important to me, which is service. And service is just sort of the concept of, and it also connects with getting out of my own way. If I'm in service of something else, then I'm not thinking about me. But service is, why is the why of this? So, I might be in service of a song. I might be in service of an artist, in service of an audience, in service of a concept. So just, I always carry an awareness with me of, how can I be of service in this situation? And that really helps me identify this piece of what's my job, the sort of psychological, how goofy can I be? How goofy can I not be? Also musically, like, what kind of risks can I take? In some situations, I can take big risks. I can like Lyle Lovett records are a great example of this. I've played on almost every Lyle Lovett record over the past 4 years, and Lyle is an artist that loves the musicians on the session to come up with stuff, come up with weird stuff. Take risks. There's a song called North Dakota, which was was a really important song for Lyle, and Ricky Lee Jones sang on it. And we recorded the song in Los Angeles in the 90s, and we were working on it. And at one of the breaks between takes, which happens on recording sessions, there was a break between takes. We had tried it, we were taking a break, they were talking about stuff. And I just started messing around with the chords. So the chords are... the basic form. So I just started playing this pattern that was loosely based on those chords, and I just started playing this. was in the booth and heard this and said, Maddie, he calls me Maddie. He said, Maddie, I love that. Can that be the intro? And so that became the intro to this song. And it was just because the culture of that session allowed me the freedom to just be able to just kind of, and in doing that, I was accessing a feeling. This was all about a feeling. So to me, there's a wistful, melancholy, a little bit of sadness in it, but that's what I was accessing. I talked about access when I was talking about feel. I was digging into my feelings because that's where the gold is. If I want to, I'm always looking for a feeling to then play, right? That's the feel. And the feelings live in my body, and I get my inner metronome started, and I get my foot going and so all this stuff works together. And function as well. Function is a little bit apart from them, but definitely connected. So yeah, that's a pretty good overview of time, feel, and function. I talk more about it than in different ways about it in the school. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's hey, Marcus.
Hey, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, I'm just sitting here absorbing this like a sponge.
I love it. That's
So much
great.
information. Yeah, and just another prompt to everyone watching. If you have any questions for Matt, just drop them in there. We're gonna sort of hit the Q&A portion here now.
Yeah, I'll drink a little
And
water.
while you were sort of expanding, Julie, hi Julie, asked about visualizing also. So
Visualizing.
you described it, something like when in your lessons you described about putting the focus, and you had this concept of sort of the 80-20 method.
Yeah, and I was going to talk about that, but I feared I was running out of time. So this relates to the concept of getting out of your own way, the concept of putting your toolbox behind you, getting in your body. So I developed a tool for this that is about attention. I call it the 80-20 method. There's another 80-20 method. If you Google the 80-20 method, there's a thing that somebody developed, which is that the concept that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort, something to that degree. This is not that. This is different. This is Matt's 80-20. So Matt's 80-20 is about attention. And so Julie asked about visualization. So I visualize my attention as a spotlight, big spotlight. That's my attention. It's this big, bright spotlight. And if you think about it, it makes sense. When I pay attention to something, I'm shining my attention, my spotlight on that thing. That's where my spotlight is going. So I figured out, and I started doing this really sort of formally, like as a practice, when I was working with Alison Krauss. Pre-pandemic, I did maybe 3 tours with Alison and her band. And we would always start the show out. I forgot the song. It was a Roger Miller song, but we'd start the show out. We'd start the set, just the two of us. 10,000 people, and Alison is magic this way. We would start this super soft piano vocal, and I mean, within 10 seconds, it's like somebody just turned the dimmer down, and you could hear a pin drop. And I've done a lot of accompanying in my session life. I've done, like Walk Away Joe. I did a bunch of Trisha Yearwood songs, Mary Chapin Carpenter. I got known for this sort of style where I did accompanied artists, mostly female artists, on ballads. So I've had a lot of opportunity to accompany, and I've learned a lot about it in my career. So I started experimenting with degrees of attention, right? Percentages of attention, and so I would experiment when I was playing with Alison when we were doing a piano vocal, just the two of us. And so I said, okay, what about I'm going to put 75% of my spotlight on Alison, that much, and then it went to 80%, and then it became 80-20. So I landed on 80% as a real sweet spot, and I don't have a dial. I can't actually dial in 80%, but it's really remarkable that if I give myself that message, if I say to myself 80% is going out, it kind of happens that way. Who knows the exact percentages, but the end result is that the vast majority of my attention is out on Allison. And so I'm not shining the spotlight here. I'm not really consciously thinking about what I'm playing. And this toolbox behind me, it's amazing because this is where the brain really comes into play, not in the front, in the back, but in the background, can take care of playing the song, reading a chart if there's a chart, playing the fills. Like my entire job can be done with this 20% of my attention. And the magic of it is that when I have that much attention on her, I can't help but be in real-time conversation. So the, you know, the danger or the sort of tricky bit about doing something over and over, like if you play the same songs every night, but also if you're someone who's practiced a bunch of stuff, a bunch of licks, you've worked on a bunch of stuff, the tendency can be that when you start to play live, you want to make sure and play the things you practiced, or make sure that you play that thing that you played last night because it was so great last night, or don't play that thing you played last night because it was so horrible last night. So all of those things are the spotlights on you. All of those things are you shining the spotlight on you. When I shine the spotlight on out, so if it's a singer, it's Allison or whoever. If it's a rhythm section, a lot of times 80-20, I'll just put 80% on the drummer. And then this amazing thing happens. I connect immediately, just magically I connect with the drummer and I start playing their feel. I'm just sort of get inside that way. And it's a really, it can be scary at first because, you know, you might think I have to pay attention to myself or I'm going to make a mistake. But you work on craft so that the craft can work for you. That's the concept. And then, so just experiment with it. 80-20, start at 50-50. Start by just saying, I'm going to put some of my spotlight out. I'm not going to put it all here, and just see what happens. So that's it. That's my 80-20 visualization.
That's beautiful. I love that you don't just break down techniques and teach people sort of vocabulary and all that stuff, which you do, but you couch that in real life scenarios. Like, how is this used? And that whole thing of connecting it to the sort of the greater purpose is just fantastic.
And, you know, to be honest, like anybody, and not to diminish the value of practice and how hard it is, anybody can spend the time, because that's what really, like technique, like that's really about discipline. So anybody who employs discipline, you know, and you can figure out, go on to Google and there's tons of stuff to practice. You can practice scales, you can practice arpeggios. There's so many content creators with so much amazing stuff that you can work on. So that's kind of a no-brainer. If you want to get better technically, do that stuff. This other stuff is, and it's all great, but you know, some of my favorite musicians don't have great technique. Have very limited technique. Some of them do, but some of them don't. But what they do have is access, you know. And it's a funny thing, but I say, if it feels good, the notes don't matter. If it doesn't feel good, the notes don't matter. And both are kind of true. If it feels good, I mean, honestly, like. Right? So that's not, you know, I'm not being very precise with my notes. What I'm doing is accessing my inner metronome, my body. I'm accessing a feeling, and it's being driven by that feeling. So the notes kind of don't matter. If it doesn't feel good, like I talked about earlier, if it doesn't feel good, you can have all the technique and vocabulary in the world. If I don't feel anything, I don't really care. So the fact is, and it's funny, I was talking with my 86-year-old mom yesterday, right here on the couch. She was visiting. And my mom is a lifelong actress and director in theater, and she's really talented. And she started talking to me about acting and was talking about you know, a monologue and saying, if I come as an actor from this place of feeling, from really connecting with the character and living that character rather than just reciting the lines, if I come from that place, that's where it's going to be received. And I was like, yeah, it's exactly what it was amazing to have my mom sort of mirror this exactly the way that I look at music, which is, if I come from that place, and hopefully all of you who just heard that were going, oh yeah, that's grooving, right? If I come from a place of feeling, that's where it's going to be received. If I come from my body, it's going to reach you in your body, and that's the goal. If I reach you in your body, you're going to start feeling something, then I got you, right? Then you want to keep hearing, I want more. If I go listen to live music and it gets me moving in some way, I'm in. I don't even care what it is. If it feels good, like, bring it on. I'm in. You got me. I'm gonna stay.
Love it. Cool. Got a great question here from Kyle, and thanks for the clarification, Kyle. Uh, when playing
Ooh,
boogie woogie type
yeah.
left-hand patterns in a song, do you change your approach when playing with a bass player versus playing alone? In other words, how do you not get in their way?
Yeah. Well, it's a tricky thing, but I don't. I mean, it just that style, if it's really authentic, can be kind of messy down there, and it's okay. But if I'm playing, if it's a sometimes the bass is playing, but really it's going to kind of sound down there. So if there tends to be space down there, it's always a case by case. Sometimes I might cop the bass, but that's a very particular sound too. The piano doubling the bass, that's a bit more old time rock and roll kind of sounding. So I start with, sometimes it's an alternating bass, which makes it a little easier for me because I can get the boogie in up here. It's case by case. I like the sound of kind of a little bit of mess down there, as long as it's correct mess. It's good kind of mess. So if I'm playing, and a lot of times I'll alternate. And that, because if I continue, if I do that in the left hand a lot, it can get a little muddy. So I've developed ways to kind of keep the feeling of it, because really, it's kind of the same feeling, especially if I've got. Right? But I can thin out the amount of notes I'm playing constantly in my left hand. But it's a case by case. You get in there with the bass player, and always on sessions, you're always coming to agreements, pianists and bass players especially, but also pianists and guitarists, pianists and electric guitarists. You come to agreements about who's going to play what register. If the guitarist is going to play something really full, I might play something really skeletal. We talk about this, playing nice with guitars. That's one of the lessons in the school. Playing nice with electric guitars. So it's definitely that too. It's definitely like, have a conversation, play a little. Does that sound right? Does it sound wrong? Bring it up. What are you doing? Can I get on that, or can I get out of the way? It's one or the other. Either what you go to works great with it, or you get right with the bass player, or you just get out of the bass player's way. But there's no rule. There's no one way that it happens. I hope that answers your question.
Very nice. Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned earlier, like being in service of the situation.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of cues that you look for? Like, when do you know when it's time to sort of step out and drive the energy? Like, are there any cues to be aware of? Like you mentioned, Lyle encouraging you to experiment.
It has a lot to do with, I think, just what the feeling of the session is. The best sessions are very open and free feeling. So there's a real feeling of, like, the best sessions to me. And I learned to make records in Nashville. I learned as a session musician and then as a producer. Um, but the method, the way records are generally made in Nashville, it's a group of musicians on the floor, a producer, an artist, and everyone is a collaborator. During 80s, 90s, 2000s, when I was really hitting it hard playing records, I mean, every musician on the floor was a producer, a musician, and an arranger, and a psychologist, and a comedian. Like, everybody brought all of those pieces of themselves, and were, for the most part, free to employ them. So, I mean, as far as cues, if something's getting bogged down and you have an idea, sometimes you just got to step out on a limb and just say, hey, what if? What if we sped it up by one beat per minute? What if we cut the intro in half? Just like come up with an idea. There was a great thing. So Tom Hanks, famous actor, I've worked with his wife Rita Wilson on a bunch of stuff. I produced a big duets record with her, and I've played on multiple records. I played on the Grand Ole Opry with her, did a bunch of stuff. So I've been around Tom because Tom is as big a massive movie star as he is. He's so proud of his wife's music career, so he shows up. When she played her first time at the Grand Ole Opry a number of years ago, and she asked me to play with her. And in the Grand Ole Opry there's all these dressing rooms backstage, and there's a whole culture that goes on backstage before and during the Opry show. People play, people jam. There's always people gathered in the dressing rooms. And so in Rita's room, there were a bunch of people, and Tom was there. And of course, because it was Tom and Rita, there were a bunch of, important yayas hanging out. But somebody came up to Tom with his son, his, sort of young adult son, and said, I know this is a cliched question, but do you have any advice for young actors? My son is an aspiring actor. And Tom, let me see if I can remember it. He said, I do. 3 things. He said, okay, the first one, and these are, and I related because all these things are a part of my approach to work as well. So the first thing is, don't be late. He said, early is on time is late is you're fired, basically. And I subscribe to that. I might be late to have lunch with my brother-in-law, but I'm never late for a gig or a session. Never. I'm early. And part of that is respect for the people that are hiring me, but also a big part of that is my own comfort. If I get there early and I can suss out, and that's the beginning of how do I do my job. That's the beginning of how does this feel? Like, okay, I'm going to get settled. I'm going to take a breath, let my nervous system calm down. The drive is done, blah, blah, blah. Got my coffee. All right, what is this, right? So that's the first one. The second one is be prepared, which is also about what's my job. But from an actor's standpoint, he said, be prepared, know my lines. And for me, it's like know my lines, know everybody else's lines. He said, you'd be amazed how many A-list actors show up first day on set and don't know any of their lines, which was astonishing to me. But, so for me, that means that's the do my job. If I don't know the artist, the style, then, and a thing that I didn't talk about on the function part was Google. So if you're going into a situation that you're unsure about, it's like it's a style maybe you haven't played or a sub-style you haven't played, get on Google, spend an hour and go down the rabbit hole of the people, the musicians that are great at the thing you're trying to do, and just do some listening. It's an amazing, just armoring yourself with that will take you so far. So that was the second one for Tom, is be prepared. The third one is have an idea, which is exactly what I'm talking about, which is, even if and you can't get attached to any of your ideas, but be the guy who has an idea, because one of those ideas is going to become the intro to a huge hit song. And then somebody's going to remember that. And not only are you going to become, Walk Away Joe, like we were with Trisha Yearwood in the studio, Sound Emporium in Nashville, making that record. That song came up, and we were just trying to find a key for her. Like there was a demo that had nothing to do with the piano part I came up with. But I just started playing this, and I forgot the key, but this like arpeggio, almost like a guitar part. I just started playing it And the reason I did was just to give Trisha some tempo so she knew where she was while we looked for a key. And everybody, as I played it, they said, "Hey, that's cool. Why don't we cut it like that?" So my idea, my just willingness to jump into trying something became the record. And so always have an idea is a great piece of advice straight from Tom Hanks. But that I think that what that means to me in context of your question is have something in the wings. It may not be appropriate, and this is where you start to really develop your intuition and your instincts about when is a good time, right? Um, and I think the more that you do these things, the more the more you learn to trust your intuition. You'll know, like, oh, well, what about this? Again, no rules, no right or wrong way to do it, um, but be ready when the door opens.
Yeah, I love that. So many of our aspiring musicians and students, they're really aspiring to be able to improvise confidently. Um,
Yeah.
can you maybe just talk a little bit about, maybe some advice on just how do you get to that point where you feel confident in your ability
Mm.
to sort of step out on a limb, or is this like a certain point you get to where you feel like you have enough tools in the backup, or enough vocabulary, or how do you
Yeah.
approach that?
Well, so first of all, you have to be uncomfortable before you get comfortable. So you have to be willing to take some risks and go out on a limb and, you know, try stuff. If the only time you're practicing soloing is, you know, at your house, at your piano with nobody listening, it's kind of a vacuum. There's no real risk. So getting on a bandstand, sitting in with people, taking solos in situations where you might mess up and a bunch of people might hear it, you got to do that. Because number one, you learn that if you do fall on your face, you don't die, and you get a little embarrassed, but it doesn't last long, and you gain courage and self esteem because you went out on a limb and tried it. Having said that, I said this earlier. The advice given to me by a college professor back in the '80s at Berkeley: play the feel and let the solo take care of itself. So really working on all these things I've talked about time and feel, about connecting your body to the music and employing your inner metronome, really working on that and getting out of your own way with your spotlight. Um, Soloing gets a lot easier when you're just playing the feel. When you're suddenly, I got to take a solo, tension occurs, right? If you're because then what just happened? The spotlight went from over there. I got to take a solo. Boom, 100% of my million-watt spotlight's on me now, and that creates tension, anxiety. Tension is the killer of music, both internally and physically. So that's another thing. Is just as much as you can relax your shoulders, breathe, breath. Where's the breath? Breath's in the body. Breath is the one part of you that's always in the moment, always. So it's just a little tidbit to think about. And vocabulary is great. I transcribed solos in college, and these were jazz solos, but I would transcribe, I would write out solos, horn players, piano players, and then I would learn them and practice them until I could play them flawlessly along with the record, then put it away, and then do another one. And what this does is, the piano especially, it's this series of hills and valleys. It's really easy to get stuck in playing the same thing in the same place in the same way over and over again. So you have to find ways to bust out of that muscle memory and create new muscle memory. And a great way to do that is to play solos from masters. And people say, "Oh, I don't want to sound like anybody else." Everybody sounds like somebody else. Everybody learns from people before them. Every musician stands on the shoulders of the musicians that came before them. So you have to play like them first, and then integrate that before your own voice can emerge more fully. And then your own voice includes these influences from all these other musicians. So I can't transcribing, playing, so if you're trying to play country, play Pig Robbins, play Floyd Kramer, play me. I don't know, play. I have a bunch of country records I played on. So and not only to learn vocabulary more, but to play things that you wouldn't otherwise play, muscle memory wise. You make your hands do things that don't come natural. You do it enough, and then it starts showing up, and not necessarily in a way that it shows up as the exact lick you practice. It shows up in just new vocabulary, new ways, new approaches. You're creating new pathways, new roads, if that makes sense.
Yeah, love that. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I don't see any more questions coming in, but maybe we'll just take this opportunity for you to talk a little bit about some of the things that people can discover in your new school, which we're so
Yeah.
excited. Just launched very recently.
Yeah, it's great. Super excited about it. So, it's called the Soul of Country Piano. I endeavored to create a school that that helped you build these tools I'm talking about, and those tools are vocabulary and both melodically and harmonically. So melodically is melody, harmony is chords. And vocabulary also includes, rhythm patterns, right? So stylistic vocabulary, what is sort of the right vocabulary, and we go through all different styles. So we start out with the basics. We talk about scales, the most common scales used in this music. We talk about chords, the most common chords used in this music, and then we get into vocabulary and rhythm in all these different styles, in traditional country at different tempos, in Western swing, in country rock, in boogie. So it's really centered, and there's specific time, feel, and function lessons, but really all of the curriculum centers around building time, feel, and function, and then having vocabulary, having craft, vocabulary, and technique that then are at your service when you play, and really a lot about rhythm, because I can't overstate the importance of rhythm really in any style. I think great rhythm players on any instrument, including drummers are all rhythm players, but great rhythm players are the musicians I want to play with. So anytime I teach anyone, that's my lens. I want to help you to become more rhythmically centered and more embodied in the music and more in touch with feel and feelings, and have the ability to sit down, turn on your inner metronome, crank up Ralph the drummer, and play something that feels good. And then people pay attention. People want to play with you. People want to listen to you. And aside from that, it feels great to do it. It's such a rewarding experience to sit down and play something that is indicative and connected with a feeling. It's so much more than playing music. It's a musical, emotional, and spiritual experience, which is what it is for me. Which is, it's life and music. It's kind of, the lines are blurred. I don't turn into a different guy when I sit down at the piano. I try to be the same person, and try to be the same person off the bench as I am when I'm on the bench. So yeah, if you're not signed up and you're interested, come join us. It's really cool, and the video exchanges I've done so far have been great, and they keep coming in. And I can't say enough about ArtistWorks, about Marcus, about the whole team that have made this possible. It's really it's a top-notch organization, and yeah, super excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, we couldn't be more proud to have you on board. Thanks, Matt. Quick question here from Dan, which seems relevant to what we're talking about now, but he's just asking, like, what level of player would you say that your curriculum is aimed at? Intermediate, advanced, or like, what are some of the prerequisitory skills anyone would need to jump in?
I think anybody can join. I think a very beginner who has never played anything on the piano, it might be a little bit above their heads, over their heads. But I think from sort of beginner, intermediate on, I think there's an entry point for everybody, and then all the way up to advanced for sure. I think the sweet spot is sort of the intermediate who's looking, maybe early intermediate to intermediate, that's looking to really up their game, is a sweet spot. But like I said, we start we start with very basic stuff, scales and chords, you know, the building blocks of the music. So I think there's something for everybody, and you know, I'm a believer in trying to meet students where they are. So um, that's you know, so I you know, I love seeing, you know, beginners that are genuinely trying to get better, you know. And I think I have something to offer them. So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So for sure, there's an on ramp if you're kind of just getting started, but
yeah,
you know, it sort of the real gold is once you've got a little bit of stuff under your fingers, but
yeah,
there's just
yeah,
so much opportunity to get to that point, play
yeah,
along tracks, tons of notation and that sort of thing. And tons of different genres. That's what I love too, is that you sort of got this on ramp period of like, these are all the essentials that you should take with you. But then you split out into all these subgenres,
yeah, yeah,
boogie and Western swing and ballads and waltzes and all sorts of stuff.
yeah. And
Fantastic.
it's all the same thing. And part of doing that is to show like time, feel, and function. It's the same. You can use you can use these skills. It's the same thing. That's the stuff to work on. And then it's just a matter of learning the style, learning the vocabulary for the style. But it's always an inside job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so where's the best place for folks to follow you online and get a hold of your music, and where can people?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I have a website, mattrawlings.com, that's probably in need of an update, but it's good impetus for that. I'm active on Instagram, which is at mattrawlings88, and Facebook, but really Facebook is sort of, it's a feeder that gets from Instagram, so I don't do direct Facebook stuff. You know, and also I have music out, so I've got a handful of solo records out on all the streaming services. So if you want to check out any of that music, um, you know, Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, but you know, you can check it out there. And there's more, you know, there's a bunch of stuff in the works that I can't really talk about, but that's on the horizon. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, we look forward to updates on that. So yeah, we'll be tracking you online. Um, thank you everybody for joining us today. Be sure to check out the brand new Soul of Country Piano School with Matt at artistworks.com. And if it wasn't clear before, you can send him videos of your playing. So,
yeah,
so Dan, whatever level you are, you know, pick something to work on, send him a video, and you'll get direct coaching by way of video from Matt. So, like you said, he'll meet you where you are and get you to that next level. And thanks again. Please
yeah.
like, subscribe to
Thanks
the
everybody.
channel. Yeah, really appreciate it. And Matt, thank you so much for your time today.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, see everybody later.
Take care, folks.